The Bernard Johnson Student Recreation Center, also known as the Johnson Center, or the JC, is a facility free to full-time UK students and faculty for exercising. I had the privilege of meeting Ryan, a senior at UK, and asked him about what brings him to the JC and what it has to offer in the terms of weightlifting or strength building. My name's Brooke Taylor, and for my Word 110 class, I have to do an audio podcast, so would it be okay if I interview you?
Yes.
Okay. Ryan works at the Johnson Center and utilizes what it offers quite frequently.
They have squat racks and bench presses and powerlifting platforms that you can't find upstairs, and upstairs has all the cardio equipment and more cable fly equipment for more isolation movements.
One of the main attractions inside the JC is its weight areas. After getting a better understanding of why there are two weight areas, I went into the lower weight area, which is where I met Devin, who is a freshman and works out regularly. I talked to him about his usual workout habits and learned that he actually uses both weight areas, the upper and the lower one. Do you utilize the lower gym or the upper gym?
It depends on what day. Usually, if I'm going for more of cardio, I'll go upstairs, and then I'll do just dumbbells that are upstairs or other machines. But downstairs is more for arms, a lot more weights, a lot heavier weights downstairs too. So
after talking to Devin, I noticed that the area was mostly male-dominated, and I was curious to see if the upper weight area was the same way. Taking the stairs in the lobby up to the second level weight area, I noticed it was a more secluded weight area, back in a corner, had a more relaxed vibe, and had a lot more women than the downstairs weight area. Don't get me wrong, you still have the men in the upper weight area and women in the lower area, but there isn't an even mix of both genders in each area. I talked to Aya, who often works out alone, and she solely uses the upstairs weight area. And what makes you come up here to the top gym instead of using the lower gym?
Downstairs is really just free weights, and it's usually really crowded with people that are obsessed with getting big. And so I just come up here because it's less crowded.
Because it's more secluded,
yeah.
And you don't feel like people are watching you.
Exactly.
Does that make you uncomfortable?
I feel judged down there. Like I'm not supposed to be down there.
I could tell that Aya liked working out alone and just doing her own thing, which is what prompted me to ask if it made her feel uncomfortable being downstairs. I was almost positive she wasn't the only one that felt this way, so I met up with Katie, who also regularly worked out before coming to college. I asked her similar questions, and I got very similar answers to Aya's concerning the judgmental atmosphere of the downstairs. Do you use the upper or the lower weight areas at the Johnson Center?
I use the upper level weight center, but I used the lower one time, and that'll never happen again.
Why?
Because I noticed I was the only girl down there, so I kind of looked around, and there was a bunch of guys who were competitive with each other, so I ended up going upstairs, and I found everyone else, and there was a ton more girls up there.
What makes you not want to work out down there? Just the guys?
Yeah, they got really competitive, and I feel like they always stare and they judge you, because obviously I am not as fit as any of them, and they have a lot more experience than I do.
Katie said something that struck me as odd, and that was that she didn't get the memo of there being an upper weight area. That played into my first impression of the area, that it's much more secluded and it's not out in the open for everyone to see, which I believe plays into the fact that it houses people who may not be as confident with their bodies or their workout habits, or just go there to get fit, not necessarily show off or be competitive. After talking to the two girls, I assumed that the competitiveness of guys, or quote-unquote getting big, was a common thought among just girls, and that the girls were the ones who felt out of place and or judged in the lower area. Not wanting to be biased, I wanted to interview a male who works out upstairs. At the conclusion of my interview, my thoughts on the subject really changed. I asked Zach which area he preferred to work out in, and he's actually used both. He used the lower gym for about 2 weeks before discovering the upper gym. I then proceeded to ask what he didn't particularly like about the downstairs, and his answer shocked me. He said he didn't like the people or the vibe that the area as a whole gave off. so I asked him to elaborate more on why he wasn't fond of the people. So you say you didn't like the people, but what specifically didn't you like about the people?
They were basically there to get big versus just trying to stay fit or be active for the day, so I felt really out of place.
Surprisingly to me, he had similar thoughts about the competitiveness downstairs and the same feeling of being out of place, which I didn't expect going into the interview, since I had the mindset that just girls felt uncomfortable or judged downstairs. Before I started talking to those that actually use the spaces, I was under the impression that males usually use the downstairs and females usually use the upstairs, with the exception of some, and that guys were more prone to quote-unquote showing off their skills. Now, why this might be true for some, it isn't the case for all, and my interviews really prove that. Although all of my interviews seem to reinforce most ideas I had based on my first impressions of the areas, some allowed me to see the other side. Katie, Zach, and Aya all gave off the impression that the downstairs was more often than not used by people whose main focus is quote-unquote getting big, or they treat weightlifting more as a competition than just getting fit. This isn't always the case, and it's not always males. None of them said quote-unquote the guys down there, but instead used the term people, which countered my original thought of guys downstairs, girls upstairs. All three people that I talked to that used the upstairs said similar things about being judged or feeling out of place downstairs. What shocked me was that Devin uses the downstairs area, which of course uses the upstairs area too, but he never said anything about feeling judged or out of place when he does use the downstairs area. It was really interesting to me that a space that is open to everyone and where people should be able to come, feel comfortable, and safe from judgment can be perceived in two completely different ways. Thinking back to my high school psychology class, I related the perceptions of Rorschach's ink blot test to the perceptions of the Johnson Center weight areas. Although the two aren't directly related, the way that one thing can be perceived in two different ways is related. In an article called Popular Response: Different Ways of Perceiving the World, it is addressed that the way people perceive objects is based on their cultural background. When the ink blot test is given, the person describes what they see when they look at a blob of ink on a piece of paper. Let's say for a particular ink mark, one person says a butterfly and another person says an angel. If the person has never seen a butterfly, they won't know to make that connection when looking at the blob. I use this same logic when comparing the ideas of the weight areas. Someone who has been judged or looked down on before by people who are more experienced than them might get the impression that that is what is happening in the downstairs area. On the contrary, if one has never experienced this or has even been the person that looks down on others, they will not see it this way. It's all about personal experiences and how one chooses to interact with a space, which is why I think there are two conflicting opinions about the downstairs area.